So, right, we're recording. This is the first ever team principal chat, and the first person is someone who divides the community, let's put it that way. It is the one, the only, Georgy Woodford. Would you like to get us started?
Well, it's great. It's great to be with you. I'm very glad that we've introduced these, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions. Of course, I am.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, I know you've divided the community. More negative, but that's just not the point here. Obviously, I know you're aiming ambitiously for season 5. Of course, you think you can win a title, which I mean, my opinion here is not the point here. The little question is, how are you actually going to turn this team, which obviously nearly got relegated last season, into a title contender for season 5? Given, I think next season you've kept Singh, haven't you? And you've also brought in GU, who you think is going to be like some title contender somehow.
Well, it's a difficult situation for us. Obviously, when I came into the job, we were struggling. We were fighting our way out of relegation, and obviously that's not something anyone wants to have on their first day. But I think if you were to ask how are we going to turn it around for season 5, I think you could look already. We're seventh in the standings. We're putting up a competitive fight. We've won a race a weekend, 2 weekends ago even. So I think already we're on the road back to prosperity and the road back to success. I think you mentioned the fact that we're quite a divisive team. I think that's possibly because in some ways, I take inspiration from people like Christian Horner, very draconian principles. But I think that ultimately, none of us are in the series to get on with people. It's about trying to get the most points as possible and trying to win that particular season. I don't know if we win season 5. I don't know if we'd be competitive in season 5. But everyone expected Stoffel to walk away in season 4. So I think anything could happen would be my response to that.
Yeah, obviously, another issue that you've also had to face during this time is the financial issues. Of course, you can't really build up a team with no money, as we've seen many a time in many forms of motorsport. Teams have aimed big, they've said they're going to win things, even like football, F1, other series, they've said they're going to aim for the hill, and then the money dries up and it all goes to shit within 2 or 3 years. Just how exactly do you plan to not go completely bankrupt? Of course, this season I know you're doing well, so the prize money will help, but of course, still next year you've got to focus on driver wages, the upgrading the facilities and the car, and obviously finances is a massive play in that. So just how exactly are you going to, keep the books balanced, as they would say?
Well, the reality is, I won't bullshit about it. We are in a financial surplus that is much, much smaller than any other team. That's true. And obviously there are safeguards in place if we go into a deficit, but luckily we've managed to avoid a deficit at all points this season. We've looked, you mentioned the issue of wages. We've looked and had luckily a great range of talent that wanted to come and race with us, but we chose ultimately drivers that are passionate about the project, are passionate about going forward and trying to really turn around Tubergian's reputation. All I'll say is that most teams every weekend are running a deficit, are losing money, are bleeding money in many cases. And yes, that prize money will help at the end of this season. Hopefully we'll stay up and we'll be able to get a nice income from that. But it's a fine balance doing finances in WTCL. And I think we've just about hit the level. Things could be better, yes. But I think we've got a good financial plan that will take us forward confidently in season 5.
Yeah, obviously, I know you've signed GU, of course, for season 5. You've big up Tim. The real question is, obviously, I know you've had your fair comments about Vivek Singh. So, what ultimately convinced you to keep Vivek Singh, despite, of course, we'd seen your comments about him saying he wasn't a particularly good driver. Obviously, that's now changed. So, what exactly changed in your mind about Vivek Singh?
I think it would be false if I didn't say that fantastic win wasn't an element of the decision making that went into it. Sure, a lot of cars didn't. I do apologise. Didn't make it through the end of that race, but he did win and he did fight off some exceptionally strong competition throughout the field. So that obviously was a key role of our decision making. And then it came down to the decision that we wanted to bring in some new talent. We wanted to fight more at the front. And we thought that ZU, he's had a difficult couple of seasons. I think that would possibly be described as an understatement. But I think he's got great potential. I think there's definitely an opportunity there. And let's not forget, this season he's been driving in Alfa Romeo. It's no coincidence that he's not doing well in the car that is 569 points behind the lead constructor. So I accept a lot of people may frown on that, particularly turning down talents like Sava and other individuals who I won't give too much detail of who we went for, obviously, but we're confident. We're confident that he's part of the package that's going to take us to. We would aim for the top 4, top 5 in season 5.
Now, you've discussed your ambition for season 5, but obviously this season, you've picked it up in the last couple of races. Laguna Seca obviously was very good for you, and then of course Assen just gone. The question is, at the moment, you're 7th in the team standing. Do you expect to finish right about 7th, or are you expecting to maybe drop or finish 8th or 9th, or are you going to have your sights set up perhaps somehow a chance at top 5 this season?
Well, what we're looking at this point is obviously so much of the standings relies on the upgrades and how much money we put into that. And as you correctly said, the finances, they're not the worst, they're not the best, but it's a very fine balance to be struck. So we need to make a really sensible cost benefit analysis in terms of considering if we're going to pay for more of these upgrades. And I think that will play a very significant role in what happens later on in the season. In terms of where we finish. If we finish 7th, we still get 4.5 million, and that will put us on very, very good stead for season 5. But we're optimistic for a top 8 finish, which is significantly beating expectations for what people expected of us in season 4. People were saying we would be easily relegated. That would be it. The word mudded was used significantly. But I think we've got a competitive package for the rest of the season, and I'm very excited to see where we manage to finish ultimately.
Now, moving back towards the driver play, but now you announced Grady, of course, coming in from Shenzhen, and I think you also brought in Menu, didn't you? The
Yes.
question is, obviously, Menu, people don't really have the best issue. Obviously, Grady looked a brilliant coup, and then in his first weekend, he goes ahead and gets beaten by, of course, one of my youth drivers, in John Harrison, which did put a slight smile to my face. But really, the question is, how high do you think Grady could go? Because obviously, he's not particularly set the world light in ITCL, but he's young, he's got decent ability on paper. And obviously for you, obviously if you can get a good youth driver, a good young driver on cheap wages, that's going to also play into the financial aspect. So the question is, just how far could Grady go with Interbergian?
I think that Grady is here to stay, and we offered him an exceptionally generous deal, which is why he chose. As there were a lot of teams interested in Grady, that's why he chose to go for us. He'll be racing as our reserve and development driver next season. So there's a lot of opportunities there for him to prove himself. And we're very excited to see what he can do. But I think it's not just about winning potentially season 5, season 6, season 7, whatever. I think it's fair to say we're not going to win season 4, but it's not about winning just one season. You have to perform consistently. And in the 4 seasons of the WTCL so far, very, very, very few teams have managed to consistently perform throughout. So we're excited to have some very, very promising talent lower down the league that could come in and really become a world-class talent in later seasons.
Yeah, of course. You mentioned teams performing consistently in that. Obviously, I think the only teams so far, if we're excluding season 1, I think the only teams who have been consistently solid each season, I think, have been Esther and I think Pretoria, because I was terrible in season 2. You could say Stoffel, but they've completely died this year. So if you can't, could the aim now be could the aim now for Spurgeon literally just be secure yourself as a top 5 team? Because I know you mentioned the top 5. Or is it get top 5 next year and then use that money to go for it in season 6? Or is it more a case of trying to... You mentioned you want to maybe move a bit more consistent because you mentioned teams don't perform that consistent. Would it not be then too bad to just consistently get in the top 5 and just establish a good platform to build off for maybe season 6 or season 7?
Well, when I came into the role, it was we looked at what other teams were doing. We looked very critically, as I'm sure you could tell. We had a major review, and we moved a lot of things. We moved our main headquarters from the United States to a lovely part of France. We rebranded totally, only really keeping the Terbergian name. But we looked at very critically during that period of reform at what other teams were doing. And we identified that a great number of teams, from the financial information that we had available to us, were just kind of sitting back and spending the bare minimum and kind of going for it occasionally, maybe an upgrade here, an upgrade there, but not really fighting with any energy, not really making the WTCL the exciting and the kind of almost impossible not to watch series that it is. So we decided we're not going to do that. We're going to put, like I said, the all into every season. We're not going to go and think, fifth will be fine this year. Fifth will be fine this year, and then we'll just do that until the end of time. We've decided that we're gonna put our all in every season. And for example, we're now we've just finished round 9. We can evaluate where we could go in the future, where in terms of this season, how we're doing so far, and then make our decisions based on that. So it's as much as it's a fantastic question, it's not a matter of just kind of plotting out this is where we're going to go and doing upwards trajectory. We're going to push hard every season and put our all into it.
Okay, now I was going to just put it. So obviously, let's then move on to your Discord. Obviously, I know you've clashed with a lot of people, myself included. I know Kappa has also. But just why do you think exactly that you argue with people so much? Obviously, I know you're a very divisive character. So just why do you think you get on people's nerves a lot?
That's a that's a very difficult question to answer. Of course, it's always difficult to evaluate oneself in comparison to other people in terms of your relationships with other people. I think a lot of it would come down to the no nonsense attitude. We don't go around trying to smooth other teams. We don't go around kind of selling a situation as brilliant when it's actually bad. We've been very honest about what we're doing, and a lot of people have criticised that. A lot of people criticised us when we said that Singh's performance was not what we were looking for at that present moment, and that we would have to think very critically about renewing his contract for season 5. But then he turned that around. Our principles, as I said earlier, are draconian. If you do well, you'll be part of our team. You'll be part of our project going forward. If you don't so much, maybe you're not going to be with us for the long run. And I think a lot of other team principals have an exceptionally different philosophy to that.
So you would basically describe yourself as a winning mentality. Then it's either you get the results we've won, or you're out the door.
Yes, it's an aggressive, results-driven mentality. Sure, we like to have a laugh. We are, I would say, we're not the least fun team. Maybe we're not the funnest, but we're definitely not the least fun team. But ultimately, that's what it comes down to. That in the words of Michael Massey, it's motor racing. We've gone motor racing, and that is really at the core of the sport. We're not here to make friends. We're here to get results. We're here to bring our team forward and attain glory for our fans, for our team, and ultimately also for our drivers.
See that an aggressive style of management hasn't particularly been a bad idea. Of course, look at Stoffel. They were firing drivers left, right, and centre. Of course, I know this season they've been scooping the car, but obviously we've seen in previous seasons they've kicked out some decent drivers. Including GU. And now they've ended up with, on paper, the strongest lineup, although as it's not exactly good either. Now, moving back to this, obviously we've discussed where you'd like to end up. If, however, things don't go your way, is there like a backup plan? Is there like plan C, B, D, E, so or is it just literally let's hope for this one plan, and if that doesn't work, we'll just figure it out at the time?
There are a number of backup plans, and there always have to be. We have to think, for example, what if first race into season 5, or what if the next round Singh gets injured? What are we going to do then? Who is going to be the person that we're going to put in that seat for that race, and then evaluate their performance on? Because obviously it's a fantastic opportunity to see what a driver is really made of. We've got a lot of backup plans. Obviously, I can't speak what they are too much. That would be a very idiotic thing for me to do. But we do have a backup plan if season 5 doesn't go so well, if the rest of the season doesn't go so well.
Yes. Now, I think we can move away from the kind of generic X questions. Is there anything else you'd like to just add here? Just any issues you might have, any complaints you might have, any thoughts you may have on just how the servers run, how the season's gone for you, obviously, and just general stuff.
I think it's something I definitely want to address, because obviously this is a fantastic opportunity for people to hear directly from me, not just over text, but hear me in person, and maybe think this guy's not so much of a expletive. I'm not going to say it, obviously. We have to be past the watershed for that, as people think. But the situation with Mallard, that was a very difficult situation for us, and there were a lot of allegations of malpractice against us in that particular instance. But I want to completely debunk that. Everything we did continually was within the rules. When rules were changed retrospectively to challenge things we'd already done, which is a debate in itself if that is right or wrong, we adjusted, we corrected ourselves, we used, like you said earlier, that plan B, that plan C, that plan D. And when it was the case with Mallard, we as much as we're not the softest spoken team, we extend the olive branch to them. We still want to work with them where we can, again within the rules of the series. And Kalino, the door is open for further discussion. We don't want to have a negative relationship with a team that has so much promise and could achieve fantastic things.
Yes, you mentioned yourself working within the rules, of course. I know I and a couple of the other people in the server have accused you of so kind of finding loopholes within the rules, kind of acting within the rules, but it's kind of a bit dodgy. Would you say that you were loopholing? Would you say that you were finding loopholes in the rules, or was it just a case of, as you mentioned, your analytical side, if it was the case, just found that there was a potential exploit in the rules and you took full advantage of that? Or are you going to, or would you say that you were completely not exploiting anything?
When you're working within the rules, you have to try and find the workaround and find what can we do that's exceptional. We were in an exceptionally challenging position, like you said, earlier on in the season and towards the end of season 3. And we had to look, what can we do differently? What can we modify? What can we change? What can we take advantage of within the rules to push ourselves further up the grid? And I think, like I said, the results speak for themselves. 180 points fantastic. P7, brilliant. On a much, much lower budget and with a in terms of rating, although we hold the fullest respect for them, a lower rated driver lineup than almost any other side in the WTCL First Division. So no, I completely deny allegations that we've acted outside of the rules. A fantastic comedian who I'm a great fan of, James Acaster, did a bit in a series that he did about loopholes, about how entertaining they are, and about how brilliant they are. And I agree with him. They're brilliant. There's something to be utilised. There's something where that is completely legal, but that is clever workery around the rules. So I deny any allegations that we've broken any rules. And again, we've adjusted when the rules have changed to ensure that we're always operating within the rules of fair play.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned earlier your relationship with Mallard. Of course, I know. Obviously, Kalina. I think Kalina knew you before he joined the server. The real question is,
yes, absolutely.
Is at this stage a working relationship between Tubergian and Mallard still feasible, or would you say that the relationship between the two teams has just been completely destroyed forever?
The door was still open for cooperation. As I've mentioned to a number of people, the issue in terms of driver lineup, where we've secured some exceptional talents such as Menu and Grady, and we'd offered them to Mallard on very competitive loans, very fair loans, to help them get up the league. You may know that they used to be based in the United States, and we used to be based in the United States. So there's an element of brotherhood there, and not looking for our own self gain, other than retaining this fantastic driver talent. And we were gutted that Mallard in some ways turned their nose up to that. But again, Polina, the door is open. We're not going to walk away from a very positive working relationship. We will work within the rules in terms of our cooperation with you, and I think in the future, maybe not the immediate future, but in the future, a positive relationship with Mallard is totally feasible, possible, and would be absolutely advantageous to both teams.
Yeah, so no, Guardi was obviously the one that shot to come. Menu, however, he we were discussing earlier about how far Guardi could go. Menu on paper doesn't scream like he could go as far. Now you obviously tried to loan him out to Mallard. Obviously that didn't work. I don't think Guardi secured the loan for season 5 either yet. But the question is obviously
we're working on it. We're working on it.
Yeah, I think you're going to try and loan them both out next season, of course. Now you mentioned Guardi's like the one who's probably got higher potential in that. I suppose moving on away from this kind of stuff, moving back to the more ambitious side. Obviously, I know cars are a massive part of WTCL. You can really only go as far as your car can go. I mean, look at this season in Ironside and Alpha and Stoffel and Honda and that. Have you made your decision as to whether or not you're going to be staying with Volkswagen for season 5, or you're going to be looking elsewhere, or are you not going to be willing to say at this present time?
I think it would be strategically naive for me to lay my cards fully on the table. And well, I don't, to my knowledge, no team so far has stated who they're going to be looking to work with for season 5. But I will say one thing about Volkswagen, which is they're a very positive outfit. They obviously brought our and I'll talk about Envy in just a second. They brought Envy to significant glory so far this season, and we hope that continues for them. They're a very competitive outfit, and we're glad to have a positive relationship with them after obviously the disaster with Renault last season. So I won't say too much, but I'll say we're very, very happy where we are at present. And just to touch on Envy, like I said, you're not going to get on with everyone. Not every team principal is going to be best mates, but we're very, very grateful for the support, the help, the in some cases advice. Again, not instruction, but advice that we've received and given to Envy. And I think we are very happy to see them win the title. There's no better team on the grid, in my view, that could win the title for season 4.
Yeah, so no Volkswagen matching your ambition, of course. Yeah, you mentioned advice. I know there was a couple of touchy points about you in advice, but I don't think there's really too much else to say unless you've got something to bring up, because obviously you've aimed ambitions and stuff and that. Yeah.
The only other thing we'll say is that while there have been disputes in the season and a great deal of the drama, more than we would like, has come from, in some ways, from Tubergian, we are optimistic. We are looking forward to working with everybody else as best we can, and in cases obviously where it's mutually beneficial. And I extend the olive branch to Shrewsbury, to Platinum, to Cosworth, Shenzhen, everybody else for the remainder of this season. Tubergy doesn't want to be a hated side. We think we've got something to offer. We are the underdog going into season 5, but we've got something to offer, and we're keen and ambitious. And I think that's criticised all too much in WTCL by people who have limited ambition themselves.
Yes, just thought I'd get your thoughts on this, but I was just thinking now, would there be like, obviously I know predictions have become a massive part of the WTCL culture. Just before we end off here, do you have one wild prediction about what might happen in the rest of season 4?
Oh goodness me. Do I have one wild prediction? I think the word "wild" might be something to contend with there. Um, I'll, I don't think we've got anything overly wild. We expect that the standings will be relatively similar to how they work, but we think it's very likely that things will remain relatively similar to what they are now. So I'm sorry, I don't have an overly exciting prediction. And I look forward to the rest of the season, even if we're going into it without any real significant expectations.
Right, I think we can end it off there. This was Georgie Woodford discussing WTCL.
It's been brilliant. Thank you very much for having me. It's been good fun.
Yeah, it's obviously just it's very nice to know what I'm doing now, just like getting the thoughts of principals, like thoughts on the community and their team and stuff. Because obviously, you can talk about it in text, in like message, of course, but of course, it's not really the same as talking to someone in person. Because if you talk to someone like in a voice call like this, you actually get like more of their insight. In a text message conversation, especially with you when we're normally arguing, you can't really get the full picture. But here we get the full picture in that.
Just as much as it's a sport of numbers, it's a sport of people, and we're very glad to be on the very significant majority, very interesting and entertaining people that are enjoyable to compete in this season with.
Yeah, that's right. I think we can end it off there. This was Georgy.
Thank you very much,
and we will see you for whichever team principal I have on this next time around. So, Georgie, would you like to say goodbye?
Thank you very much. It's been great to be here, and I've enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you.
See you until the next time. That was Georgie Woodford, and this was part 1 of the Team Principal interview series.